All right, happy Saturday, everyone. Today I'll be going through some of the network components of OCI, and then we are gonna build a little bit on first start with the network, and then we are gonna build something with the load balancers and compute instances. So let's see what comes up. But I just wanted to start first with to show everyone what I'm gonna build, and then we can take a look a little bit on the concepts of networking and go from there. So what I wanted to build today is actually what's included here. So we are gonna build a VCN, then we're gonna build a couple of subnets. I'm gonna go through what they are. We're gonna look on the availability domains, fault domains, what they are, and then in the subnets we're gonna place the compute instances, 2 of them, and the load balancer on another subnet, on the public subnet, and then we're gonna look on the security lists and network security groups to restrict the traffic, and then we're gonna also look on the route tables to how we can route traffic through NAT gateways, internet gateways, and service gateways, and what they are. So let's see how that goes, and if we run into any issues. And if you have any questions like during the session, then just put them in the chat, and I'll try to look on those as well. But yeah, let's start first. Like I'm here in the OCI console, and you can see like a lot of information here. This is my own tenancy which I'm using, and my home region is Canada Southeast, Toronto. So when you first start with OCI, you're gonna have to pick your home region, and there's plenty of regions nowadays where to choose from. And from the official documentation, if you just type OCI Oracle documentation, you can find like this documentation link. I think it's the first one which pops out, and you can easily see like all the regions available. There's a lot of them nowadays. Like I think just yesterday they announced one new region in UK, Cardiff, if I remember correctly, or Newport. Yeah, this one. And if you look at the regions, you can always see the amount of availability domains here on the right. So most of the regions have only one availability domain, and some of them, like the Germany, I think it was one of the first ones which came available in the OCI generation 2, has 3, and Phoenix has 3, and Ashburn has 3 as well in the US and UK, London. So if you are planning to start doing something, then, and if you have some requirements with the availability domain failover, then it's something to think of. But I think Oracle promises that in the same geographic area, you always have at least 2 regions available, so you can do like from region to region failover if needed. All right, so let's actually start with the networking build. So I think there's a lot of like good quick links here. For example, set up network with a wizard. You can do it really quickly, like without prior knowledge. But we'll do everything manually today. We could use the OCI CLI or Terraform to build it, but I think as an example in this first session, I'm just gonna use the console, and we can go from here. So on the left side you have the navigation, networking, and then we'll just start with the virtual cloud networks. Oops. So that timed out. We'll just do a relogging. Don't know why that actually happened, because I was just there. And yeah, you can see I'm using a multi-factor authentication from a tenancy. It's something we can set up at some point. I'm just gonna get the notification in my phone, and then I'm just gonna allow the login. Here you go. And I'm back in again. All right, so let's go back to the networking, virtual cloud networks. And here you have the wizard, so you can use that one, or you can create the VCN manually here. And I think first thing where I usually start is to where the actual components will be placed. So now I'm just placing everything under this compartment, which I'm named comp build. So we will use that, and all the resources will be under this compartment. And you can then play around with the IAM permissions so that you have some restrictions who can access the resources and so on. We can take a look on IAM on a later stage, more deeper. So I'm just gonna start by creating the VCN, which will be our virtual cloud network. And there's some options, not too many here. So I'm just gonna give the name, and for my purpose, usually I just use usually in the start I use the naming, so that I name the component here, VCN, and then I'm just gonna use it build. So that will be our VCN name and compartment. And this CIDR block, so it's the IP address space what we are gonna use, like all the subnets what we are gonna create will need to be within this CIDR block what we give. And example here is this 10.000/16, which is a quite wide IP address space. So I have this CIDR to IPv4 conversion page, which I can use to calculate like all the IP addresses. So if I calculate this /16, you're gonna see that it basically covers 65,000 IPs, which is quite a lot, but obviously you can't extend it or change it, the VCN CIDR address space after creation, at least for now. So we are just gonna create this time a little bit smaller, and then we can go from there. So I'll just use /23, which you can see it covers first IP is here, and the last IP is basically the .1.255. So total amount of IP addresses will be 512. So I can basically do 2/24s, because you see 24 covers also always this .00 until end of it, so 255. So we can use that one. So let's just put it here, 10.000/23. DNS resolution. So you could use the Oracle DNS, which we are gonna use, or if you have a third-party DNS, either from, let's say, internet, or you have something custom running on your VCN, or will have something running, you could use that. Or then if you have on-premises DNS, you could use that one as well. And DNS label, you can see that the DNS label comes here, like when you add it. And also if you have one from subnet, it's gonna be quite a lot of things. So let's just put build here. Advanced, I think only tagging is here if you want to use tagging. We're not gonna go there today. Okay, so we are ready to create the VCN. And you can see that's instantly available. Okay, and what I was showing earlier is that we'll create those two subnets, one public and one private. So we're gonna start with the public one. So let's just put the sub bub and 001. Yeah, we can put some. And basically when you create the subnet, if you have multiple availability domains, then you can create this regional subnet. So it says here that then instances what you create here can be in any availability domain in the region. So it's I think it's useful if you, for example, use load balancer, you have multiple compute instances and you have a regional subnet, so then you can just place those compute instances, for example, in the same subnet within different availability domains. So if one availability domain would go down, then you still have the instances running there. And this is the original one what OCI had, so AD specific subnets as well. So we are going to use regional, but since we are in Canada, Toronto, we only have one AD, so it really doesn't matter. And it's gonna put our CIDR block here for the subnet, so it's gonna use these 256 IP addresses. And remember that OCI always reserves just a moment. Yeah, it always just reserves 3 IP addresses here from the CIDR block what you give, so 2 from the start and one from the end, so those won't be usable by you. And then you can select the route table, so we only have the default route table here. I'm just gonna use it for now, and we are gonna create a separate route table later on. But it's something like a little bit depends like in the order what you're gonna do this. So you could do the route table first and then just assign it here, but I'll do it in this order here today. And then define the private or public subnet. So it's public, we can allow public IP addresses for this instance, and use DNS hostnames in this subnet. So this will be just internal for the VCN. So even though it's a public subnet, we can't connect with this host name. So if if I put here like a subpub 001, it would also add it here. So let's just put a pub here. Same with the DHC options. I'm just gonna use the default ones. So if you would have some specific DHCP options you wanna use, for example, with the custom DNS, then you would create the DHCP options first and then just assign it here. Security lists. And this is one thing I'm gonna touch soon. It's the default security list. So I think there was a good discussion not too long ago, and I think Martin Bach had a really good blog post as well on the default security lists and what they allow. So it's something we should look on once we assign them and what they allow us to do. Okay, and that's basically it. And we can just already create the subnet. All right, see it's provisioning here, and we can just see the CIDR block and that it's public. But we can already move on creating the private subnet. So we have everything ready. Just gonna do it a little bit quicker this time. Just gonna name it as subpri and just use a different CIDR block. So those CIDR blocks can't overlap. And same is actually if you combine 2 VCNs, or for example use local peering gateway to connect 2 VCNs, the CIDR blocks shouldn't overlap. So I can use the default one, and let's just name it PRI, use the default, and then we are gonna use the default security list. All right. And now actually like next thing what I'm gonna create is all the gateways, because before we create the route tables we need to have the gateways available. So the gateways I'm gonna create, you can just check it, there will be one for the public subnet which will have the internet gateway. So in the public subnets, if you want the instances to have internet access and also that the instances or load balancers, whatever you have running there, can be accessed from the internet, you need to have internet gateway there, and then a public IP address for the resource. And then on the private subnet, we are going to create the NAT gateway, so it routes traffic to the internet, but then obviously you can't access the private subnet through NAT gateway. So just that we have the internet access. And then service gateway, it's always good to remember. Sometimes you might forget it, and then you can't access, for example, the Oracle services, specific Oracle services like object storage or the YAML repositories in the VCN or from the VCN. So those three we are gonna create. Okay, so first the internet gateway, and it's actually really straightforward. We'll just gonna give it the name. Just gonna create the here, and it's basically name and compartment. Create it. Then the next thing what we are gonna create is the NAT gateway. Same here. Let's just name it NAT gateway 001. And this is actually something I noticed just this week. I'm not sure like if it has been here like a longer time, but there's two options nowadays. So you can create the ephemeral public IP address, so it's only bound to the lifetime of the NAT gateway. So that's how it's been before, but you can also use a reserved public IP address for your NAT gateway. So which is handy if you have an IP address what you want to use always, so that it shows up as the same IP address towards internet. Okay, let's just create it. All right, and now the next thing we are gonna create is the service gateway. All right, and I think here it's good that they have these information bars here, so that it gives a little bit more insight, like for example why the service gateway would be needed. So let's just use a really simple naming again, and here actually you have a couple of options. See, only use service gateway for object storage, so that traffic wouldn't traverse through the internet, or you can use it for all services, so for example the YAML repositories. So that's what we are gonna choose now. All right, so that's done now. And yeah, I created one public subnet and one private subnet here. So I have one of each, and then I have one internet gateway, one NAT gateway, and one service gateway. And I can actually use the service gateway like to both subnets. So let's create the route tables next. So I'll just name this RT-pub. So this will be our public route table, and I'm gonna give it the rules here. So when you create the routes, you actually don't need to create any route within the VCN. So that's handled by Oracle, but everything you route to internet or to your on-premises network or whatever, then you need to define it here. So you have options here, or I have options here, and I'm just gonna choose the internet gateway. And if you would want to restrict the internet access to specific IP addresses, you could give it just like a cider blocks here, but we'll just do it like this. So we'll put all the, basically everything is routing through the towards the internet gateway. But if you have like a VCN specific traffic, then it's not gonna go through the internet gateway. I'll just select the target internet gateway, and I think you can have only one internet gateway per VCN. Just Oh, did I make a mistake in the... Okay, let's see. Okay, so now I have the public route table. So let's see here. Oh, you're correct. Thanks. So this one actually, yeah, I made a mistake. So it's a public instead of the private. So thanks for that. Let's just terminate it. Create it again. Doesn't take too long. It's good to have a second or more eyes on it always. And that's why actually many times like I don't want to use console, because manually you do these things, you'll run into issues. Oops. Just make it private 001 and put the and select the private here. Oops. Use the default still. Default here as well, and default security list. All right, now it looks correct. Thanks a lot. So let's continue on the route tables. So now we have the public route table here, and I only have the internet gateway, so I actually need to add the service gateway here as well. And again, here you can choose the what do you want to route into, even though in the service gateway you can define, but you can define it here as well. I'm gonna just choose it. Just put my service gateway. Oops. Yeah, I don't need it actually here. That's something I forgot. So it says here internet gateway target cannot be used together with service gateway for all. So if I would use it for the object storage, I think now it would allow me to do it. Yeah. Okay. So now the object storage traffic would be routed through the service gateway, but all other traffic would go through the internet gateway. Okay. Small thing, but something to keep in mind. All right. Let's create another one. So I'll create the private route table, and then we'll do the route rules here. So now we are gonna just choose the NAT gateway and put all the traffic going through that. And always the most specific route takes precedence. So if I would have an on-premises route through dynamic routing gateway, then I would put more specific route here and then put the DRG here, and then that would go through DRG and everything else would go through NAT gateway. All right. Let's just we can just do it another route rule, and we'll put the service gateway here. Just now we can choose all the services, select put something there, then I'll just create the route table. Okay, and now I have the route tables. Both of them have two rules, so they should be able to route the traffic correctly. But let's go in the subnet and switch it. So here it's the default route table for the private. We're just gonna change it. I kinda like that the information comes here, but maybe it could automatically fade away, because you always like sometimes end up with a huge list which you need to click out from there. Okay, and this is the private subnet. We're just gonna assign it here, save it, and for this I'm just gonna use the default DHCP options, because there's no custom DNS in this time what we are gonna be playing with. So saving, now the route table is there. Next I'm just gonna jump on the public, and let's edit it here. And just gonna change it for the public. Okay, so now routing should be correct. Okay, so next let's take a look on the security lists. So we have the default one here, and that's assigned for both of the subnets. So you can see something what it allows by default. So it allows all the ICMP traffic in the VCN. Then it also allows SSH from everywhere, and also ICMP from everywhere. And you can see the stateless, like the rule is always stateful or stateless. And even though like I've been playing around with this for a long time, I always like have a hard time figuring out which one is stateful and which one is the stateless. But anyway, like when this rule is stateful, let me see if I, yeah, so this one is stateful, so then it allows the traffic also back without any rule. So you only need the allow rule here, you don't need to allow the egress traffic back without another rule. And the egress rule by default allows all the traffic outside. So we can actually this time, because just gonna use SSH soon, so we can allow this. But then there's some additional rules what we want to allow. So basically what I want to allow is the port 80 traffic for TCP, since we are gonna use the load balancer. So I'm just gonna use the network security groups this time, so you get an understanding what they are. And NSGs, so network security groups, they are actually tied with the VNIC of the resource. So if you have, for example, pair of web servers like we are gonna have this time, you can create the NSG, assign the port 80 there, and then group it to those web servers, which is quite handy. So you don't need to allow it for the whole subnet like you do with the, you assign the security list for the whole subnet. So let's create the NSG, which is gonna be, let's put it NSG web, and we're gonna allow the rules. We're gonna allow side block, and we are gonna allow sorry, this is gonna be our public NSG, so bear with me. So this is gonna be assigned for the web servers, so they're gonna allow port 80 traffic from the public subnet, and it's gonna allow TCP, and destination port is gonna be 80. So you can see allows TCP traffic to port 80 from the public subnet. And we're just gonna create this, and then later on when we have the servers, then we are gonna assign, or when we create the servers, we're gonna assign this NSG here. Okay, so it's here, and let's see, no VNICs assigned, they're gonna show up here then. Yeah, so that's it. And we could actually create the NSG for the load balancer as well. Let's do it and see. And for that, obviously, we need to allow all traffic coming from the internet. I could limit it to my IP address as well, but we're just gonna use this, and then, oops, TCP and port 80. And interesting here is that you could select another NSG as a source type, so you could create sort of like chain here that where you allow traffic from. Okay, so this is the other one. So we'll just create that one. Okay, think now we pretty much have everything we need to, so that we can create the compute instances and then load balancers. So let's go here on the VCN. Yeah, we can see we have 2 subnets, route tables, and NSGs. We use the default security list, which sometimes it might be a good idea, like if you have a public subnet, then be careful that you don't immediately allow like all the traffic with the SSH. Just as a good policy to keep in mind. Okay, so it's gonna use the left side hamburger and then select the compute instances here. Take a sip of water. And yeah, I'm ready to create the instances, and I'm just gonna create them in the same compartment. Create instance. It's gonna use, this is my web. Let's just put comp web 001. I can just select the first 180 what I have, and actually fault domains I didn't touch them yet, but it's you have the option to choose the fault domain. So each AD has I think minimum 3 fault domains, or I think they only have 3, but you can select it manually if you want, and then if you select a different fault domain, then it's a different how to say it, hardware group, so that if you have, for example, switch failure or some hardware failure, then having it in a different fault domain, then it's not gonna impact your other server which runs on the fault domain too. You have a choice of image, so you could change it here. Just select the Oracle images, platform images. I'm just gonna use the Oracle Linux 7, which is the default. And then the shape. So that's better. Shape determines like how many cores you have, memory, what kind of network bandwidth you have, and you can select the bare metal machines. And this AMDP Flex is custom shape, so you can define yourself like the number of OCPUs and amount of memory to be used. But what I'm gonna use is on the here specialty and legacy. So I'm just gonna use the always free image here for these web servers. There's what I've noticed, there's a limit of 2 free instances per your account here, so I can use two of them here and for the web servers, and then if I use a jump server, which I'm gonna use, then that I need to provision as a normal image. So okay, let's select the free image here, and then I'm gonna configure the networking. So I can select the existing network, use our VCN, then the sorry, need to use the private because this is gonna be private only, and not gonna assign public IP address. I can assign the NSG here, so I'm gonna assign the web server NSG here. No public IP address. SSH keys, so you need to have a public and private key pair so you can log in with the default OPC user. And just gonna have a key here. I'm just gonna paste it here. Here we go. So it's there, and I could configure boot volume with the encryption, boot volume size. But actually now that we want to create a web server, I'm gonna use these advanced options, and I can use this cloud init script. So you could have a file which you define, or you can paste the script here. So there's two ways. I think you can use the run command, for example, or the cloud init format, which has a run command, or you can just use a simple bash script here, which I'm gonna use this time. Just gonna take it, put it here. Okay, and you can see I'm just installing HTTPD, some PHP stuff. Then I'm gonna add the firewall, or open the firewall for HTTPS and HTTP. We are only gonna use HTTP this time. And the other thing is I have this one script or PHP file, which I found it from, I think Oracle had it as some kind of example. So it just creates a PHP page which has information on the instances. So I think it's good when we use it through the load balancer. And I'm gonna copy it to the this location here on the server. And I can what I've done with the object storage is I've made a pre-authenticated request, so I can just download it. I'll show it. So then it gives you this URL path, and you can access it without any other permissions. Then there's some options on the monitoring cloud agent. I'm just gonna not dive on those this time. And then we can just create the instance. And it's gonna take like a minute or so. We can go back. We can see it's provisioning here. And let's create the second one. Comp web 002. Let's just select the fault domain 2. Change the shape. I think it would be nice if you could have sort of like a default shape here, so you could always have it available. Like if your organization like defaults to 2.2 or 2.4, you would have it always here. But obviously you won't be creating it through the console all the time. Let's select that. Use the same. Gonna use the private. Gonna select the web NSG. Yep. And no public. Gonna paste the key again here. And then we are gonna put our script here as well. Yep, and that's it. We can just create it. Okay. And just for to check everything is good, I'll just create the third instance, which will be our oops, yeah, not I think I named it comp, like the compartment, so this wasn't a good idea. Well, just name it as a compute jump 001. No need to define the fault domain. We can use this flex shape now. Gonna use the public subnet and assign a public IP address. Just gonna use the same public key here for all. You have this option nowadays that the OCI generates also the SSH key pair, which wasn't there previously. So I think that's quite nice if you just need to quickly create the instance. But I'm using same key now here because then it's easier for me to just play around. Okay, I'm just gonna create it, and soon I should have it available. And then we can log in once we have the public IP address here. It gives you it quite fast. The username you can see as well, and then you can just use that for the logging. But it's gonna use the Cloud Shell, which is like a really nice thing here. So you don't need to open your own SSH client if you want to use this Cloud Shell. And it usually takes like a minute that it attaches your home directory. So if you have some files saved here, then you will have them available each time. And I think at some point it archives it. So if you haven't used the Cloud Shell for a while, so then when you use it, it just takes a little bit more time. So should be soon here. Now you can see my compute instance is available here as well. Okay, yeah, let's just wait a while. It shouldn't take too long. Okay, now it's already connecting, and here we are. So you can see some information here. We have a 5 GB of storage, and then it's located in Toronto. And obviously you can't access your private resources here through here from the Cloud Shell, but you can access the public resources. So I'm just gonna create my private key, which I'm gonna use to log in. Just gonna paste it here and change the permissions on the file like this. So then I can use it to log in, and let's take it. Just gonna define my key, OPC, and we can take the IP address here, paste it, and we should be able to log in. Okay, that's it. So now we are logged into the our bastion or the jump server. I like to use jump server. Let's take a look on the web servers. This is actually one thing, like I was complaining quite long that the public IP or the IP addresses didn't show up here. So now the public address shows here in the instance view where you have all the instances, but I think it would be nice if you would have the private IP here as well. So let's take a look. Like this one is 1.2 and this one is 1.3. So let's just obviously I need the same key here what I used earlier, so let's take it again. Just gonna copy it, see that it comes correctly. Yeah, and yeah, I think the keys are really good, apart from like compared to the old password, always like just using that, but sometimes like playing around with the keys, it's quite exhausting. And now I'll just use my key again, and we can use 0.2. Yep. So I logged in here, and I think the thing what I want to check is that I have the file here, and you can see the file index.php which we copied. It's here now, and also if we look the which way was it? You can see that the HTTP server is also started here. Obviously we can't access it access it from the internet because we can't access the private subnets here. So now we are gonna create the load balancer, and after that we should be able to see the page. Okay, let's go on back to networking, and load balancers are here. Actually they don't go inside, I mean from the left side navigation you have the load balancers here and not under the VCNs, which yes, maybe it makes sense because you can then assign them different. Okay, so the load balancer name, we'll just use load balancer public 001, and you can create the public or private load balancer, and depending like and it used to depend, like if you have a public load balancer and multiple ADs, then it would create it in 2 ADs. So the primary would be in one AD and the secondary would be on another AD. each one of those takes one IP, like from your subnet, and then it would assign a floating public IP, which then, in case the primary would go down, it would automatically move it to secondary. So you don't have visibility on that. So then it's more what the OCI does in the background. And nowadays it's the same with private, so they also have a failover within the, or with the ADs if needed. But there's like if you have a single AD region, obviously if the AD goes down, you won't have a failover to anywhere else with the load balancer. So we are gonna create a public, and then you see you have the options now for the bandwidth. I'll just use the free one because I don't wanna spend my money on bigger shapes. And not too long ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, if you notice, the load balancer shape can now be changed dynamically. So you are not bound to the shape you chose, and you can just play around if needed. Let's just use the same VCN, obviously. Select the public. And here we can select the NSG. And yeah, now it came. We can use it, and I think creating compartment. Okay, yeah, so that's the first step. And then we have some load balancing policies, so weighted round robin, IP hash, and least connections. So you always need to figure out which one you use. We're just gonna use the round robin for this one. And add backends, we need to add backend and backend servers. So those two web servers, that's gonna be our web backend. And then we need to define a health check policy so that the load balancer knows that the servers are available and it can route traffic to those. And yeah, then third step is the configuring of the listener. So let's add the backends. So we'll just add our two servers here. So this load balancer creation with the backends used to be really clumsy, but I think now they've streamlined it quite a lot, so it's quite fast to create them. We're gonna just select the backends, port 80, so that's already there. Then the health check, we're gonna use the HTTP health checks. So that's something, I think it comes up in the, if you ever do the OCI certification, the architect one. So there's a question about the load balancing policy that it, even though it's showing green, then you can't access the HTTP service. So that's because you would use TCP health checks, and TCP health check doesn't validate if the HTTP page is coming up correctly, or sometimes I've seen that people use TCP health check towards port 22, and then you have HTTP service, which obviously doesn't really make that much sense. And you have some options, obviously port, what it uses for health check, and then the URL path. So we are just going to use our index.php. If you would use SSL, and I think there's a couple of nice articles like how you can use Let's Encrypt easily. Like if you have your own, just your own domain, then you could just you would put the SSL certificate here. Now for now we are just gonna use HTTP. Okay, and then we can define the listener name, type of traffic. It's gonna be HTTP only, and gonna monitor the port 80, and then obviously like here we can define the 443 and then the SSL certificate here. And there's a couple of different ways, like you can do end-to-end SSL. You could do the SSL from the backend, so then SSL terminated on the listener, which I think it's in many cases most common one. Okay, let's gonna create it. And it shouldn't take too long. usually couple of minutes here. But yeah, let's take a quick look. I actually by accident I was browsing with the Ashburn region, so my object storage for the index.php was in the Ashburn region. So if we take a look, and that's like when you subscribe to different regions, you can just switch them from the drop down really quickly. So I think I have it here. Yeah, I have this bucket, DFG. You can see the visibility is public, and then I have this object here, and you see I have two pre-authenticated requests. So one which actually expired already, and the other one which is active, so that we could download the files today. So here then I could just delete the file and do some change the versioning or upload a new version and things like that. That's a different topic overall. Okay, let's go back to our home region and look on the load balancer, and we just need to change the compartment. So sometimes, like if you browse around with the compartments, then just remember to check that you're in the correct compartment. All right. So we have our load balancer created with a public IP, so we can just copy it, and we can try if it works already. Sometimes like you need to wait until the health checks show up. Okay. No, it already works. So you can see here like the IP/index.php. So now it's going to this 002 instance, and I think this is a handy PHP script, so you can just get some statistics from the instance metadata. So there's this complete instance metadata in OCI, which gives you some information on the instance itself and some information around it. So it just gets the information here. And now if I refresh, see it changes the load balancer, changes it to the other server as well. Just gonna refresh it, yeah, and gonna switch around. So I think one thing to note here is that at least I feel that sometimes this health check takes a long time to get it from unknown to green. So I wish there would be some kind of method to see like what it's actually doing, like when it's refreshing it, or when are you expected to see like a new health check, even though you can define the time, but sometimes it's hard to figure out. And what I've noticed is also that, okay, with some browsers, mainly with Internet Explorer 11, so I think that's gonna be end of life anyway soon. So if the health check here is unknown, then it might be that it doesn't pass the traffic correctly, so it's gonna stop on the load balancer and give, I think, like 502 error. So yeah. And now you can see the overall health is okay. So I think if we look the backend sets here, then both oh, they are not showing green yet. Let's see. Okay, now here they show health shows okay. And here if you check, I think this is actually like, you can see that when it last time it checked the health, so that's okay. But here still it shows unknown, so maybe some kind of like it doesn't sync it each time. Yeah, but that's pretty much it what I had in mind building today. So just like a basic networking concepts with all the VCN subnets gateways, and then building like a load balancer and on the public one, and then on private we created those two servers which only accept traffic from the load balancer subnet. And what I could actually do, let's go back a little bit. Now it changed it here, the health green as well. So what I could actually do is that I could also limit the NSGs, and that's actually what the one should do is for the web servers. Now they allow all the traffic from the subnet. So you probably should have a really small public subnet for the load balancer, and that's one way to do it. And then you allow only that one, or you allow the specific IPs. So I think this way it's good to allow the subnet traffic, but just make the load balancer subnet really small, unless you know that you need to grow it later. Yeah, afterwards, like I'm just gonna terminate the services, and for the network services it's really handy nowadays. Like I can just do it here now, obviously, because I have the load balancer and I have the compute instances. This is gonna fail, but this one shows nicely like what is gonna terminate, and then you could just run it from here. So for testing purposes, this is quite smooth. Okay, but yeah, that's pretty much it. If you liked this, then just leave a like on the video, so I know that maybe I'll keep this in the future as well. One thing what I was thinking of keeping is IAM, so on the compartments, policies, and things around it. And then we could also dive a little bit deeper on the networking and look all the cases, for example, with the DNS and things like that. But hopefully you liked it. Like, this is the first time I tried this stream. There's been some people asking like if I could do something like this. So at least for me it's fun to go this through, and that's it. Hope you have a nice Saturday. Thanks all for checking this video.